the U.S. Department of Defense is targeting Chinese game publishers by identifying them as military companies. Quote, "The department is determined to highlight and counter the PRC military civil fusion strategy, which supports the modernization goals of the People's Liberation Army by ensuring its access to advanced technologies and expertise are acquired and developed by PRC companies, universities, and research programs that appear to be civilian entities. Section 1260H directs the department to begin identifying, among other things, military civil fusion contributors operating directly or indirectly in the United States." End quote. At a time in gaming history when rising prices and increasingly restrictive licensing and DRM controls are the biggest concerns gamers face, it's absolutely wild to have to add Chinese spies to that list. Hello fellow travelers and welcome to the Hard Light Network. Alrighty guys, so in my last video we talked about how Steam potentially delisted a bunch of games that were being used by the Chinese government in order to harvest players' data. And while that story was a little more speculative as it relied on my own research into the matter, this story is a little more developed. That's right guys, as you may have read from the title of today's video, we are talking about how the US Department of Defense is targeting Chinese game publishers by identifying them as military companies. We've got a lot to cover today guys, but before we get into it, let me remind you to hit that like button, subscribe so you don't miss out on any of the content that I've got coming up for you guys in the future, and also hit the comment section down below with your thoughts on today's story. Your support is greatly appreciated and it helps push these videos through the algorithm to reach other gamers just like yourself. But with that being said, let's get into today's article. And today's reading comes to us from our friends over at Rock Paper Shotgun and is entitled, "The US just added the world's biggest games publisher, Tencent, to their list of Chinese military companies. Tencent says it's a mistake." And the article begins as follows. Chinese publisher Tencent are the biggest video game company in the world. Their wholly owned subsidiaries, including League of Legends developers Riot Games, Path of Exile developers Grinding Gear Games, and UK outfit Sumo Group, they own shares in everything from Epic Games through Ubisoft to Silent Hill 2 rebooters Bloober Team. Are you a game developer? Odds are at least 1% of your body belongs to Tencent, maybe one of your toes. And now it turns out that Tencent are some kind of military operator as well. Or at least, that's what the US Department of Defense would have us believe. They've just somewhat randomly added the firm to an infamous list of Chinese military companies, together with lithium-ion battery maker CATL. This potentially makes it difficult for Tencent to do business in the States, but Tencent says it's all based on a misunderstanding. As reported by Bloomberg, the US DoD's list of Chinese military companies dates back to an executive order given by recently re-elected President Donald Trump in 2020, which sought to prevent US companies from investing in entities with ties to the Chinese military. Formerly known as Section 1260H, the list is updated annually and currently runs to 134 companies, including phone manufacturer Huawei. Being on there doesn't mean the companies in question are immediately banned from doing business with the USA, but it puts pressure on the US Treasury Department to sanction them. This might scare away investors. The BBC reports that Tencent has already seen a share price fall in Hong Kong as of today, Tuesday, 7th January. Tencent, naturally, say the whole thing is an error and that the designation will have no material effect on their activities. Quote, "We are not a military company or supplier," Tencent spokesperson Danny Marty commented to the BBC. "Unlike sanctions or export controls, this listing has no impact on our business. We will nonetheless work with the Department of Defense to address any misunderstanding. I'm no scholar of superpower geopolitics, but my understanding is that all this forms part of the U.S. efforts to contain China both economically and in terms of the military applications and connections of Chinese tech companies and research organizations. Here's a U.S. Department of Defense press release from 2022 which spells out the thinking." An excerpt, quote, The department is determined to highlight and counter the PRC military civil fusion strategy, which supports the modernization goals of the People's Liberation Army by ensuring its access to advanced technologies and expertise are acquired and developed by PRC companies, universities, and research programs that appear to be civilian entities. Section 1260H directs the department to begin identifying, among other things, military civil fusion contributors operating directly or indirectly in the United States. End quote. Given the sheer scale of Tencent's operations, they also work in generative AI and cloud computing and own WeChat, one of the largest social media networks. It seems probable that they have military connections somewhere, but then again, so do many large US tech companies like Activision Blizzard and Microsoft. Many are the links between the tech biz and the world's armed forces. All this comes amid news that Tencent are considering a buyout of Ubisoft with the aid of the founding Guillemot family. It also follows the resignation of 2 Tencent-appointed Epic game directors in response to a U.S. Department of Justice investigation into potential antitrust violations. So there you have it, guys. The U.S. Department of Defense has identified yet another potential threat to national security. However, how much water does this hold? Just like the article stated, at least when it comes to the US, there is no shortage of connections between tech companies and the United States military, and I believe that the same can be said for the Chinese government, considering they have an active role in all of their tech companies as outlined in our previous video. Honestly, it's probably time for us to create another video doing a deep dive on all of the connections between the US military and the video games industry, as there's quite a lot, from propaganda to recruitment, as well as applications of civilian military training. And to tell you the truth, if that's the case here, then it certainly stands to reason that it's possible China is engaging in similar activities through their games industry. It's interesting to think that in this day of modern gaming, the online battlefield could be considered just another front for asymmetric warfare, not only for the purposes of spreading propaganda and social engineering, but also for the practical application of harvesting data from players around the world. Data that can be used for the purpose of mapping out soft targets or personal information that can be used for stealing money. Operatives can even use multiplayer communications to gather intel on civilians and coordinate with one another. This really is a Metal Gear Solid type situation where gaming has evolved past entertainment and moved into the realm of the military-industrial complex. At a time in gaming history when rising prices and increasingly restrictive licensing and DRM controls are the biggest concerns gamers face, it's absolutely wild to have to add Chinese spies to that list. It'll be interesting to see how this affects gaming moving forward, and of course we will continue to follow the story here at the Hardlight Network as it develops. But for now, that's all we've got for you today, guys. Thank you so much to everyone who has watched up to this point. Do me a favor and hit that like button, subscribe so you don't miss out on any of the content we've got coming up for you in the future, and also take to the comment section down below. Do you feel like Tencent is really a Chinese military company? Do you feel like they are increasing their efforts to gather data from American citizens? Or do you feel like this is more of an attempt from the US government to curb China's increasing dominance in the gaming marketplace? How do you think this will affect gaming moving forward? I'd love to hear what you have to say in the comments, and until next time, thank you guys for watching. If you liked the video, leave a like, and until next time, love you guys, safe travels.